Nelly Korda, she's got one of the best swings in the game of golf. It's so beautiful and so awesome to watch. It reminds me a lot of Tiger or Adam Scott or even a bit of Rory McIlroy in there. So we've got face on the left hand side and we've got down the line on the right. So I always like to look at setup, see what people do at setup, see if they've got any idiosyncrasies, anything like that. So if we look, Nelly's quite tall, so she's quite upright at setup there. You'll notice a little bit of curvature in the spine. She's not bolt upright like you see a lot of players in the early 2000s where they try to create a really straight spine. She's really matching that neutral spine that you see in everyday posture. Now, in terms of the arms, they hang a little bit outside the shoulders. You'll see that in a lot of players. You'll see a little bit of foot flare. I love that for the hip rotation. It just allows free hip rotation. Pretty neutral grip there. Nothing untoward. Maybe a little bit weak in that left hand. Camera angle slightly off, so can't really tell, but a touch weak we maybe say. You'll notice, well, you might not notice, but there's a little bit of tilt in the peak of the cap. Usually you'll see players with left eye dominance will have that little tilt there just to position that left eye in the correct spot for them visually. And also, I think Nelly wears glasses, so you can see some little tilts in the head that maybe stem from wearing glasses as a junior. You can sometimes see that. So let's take her into backswing. Now, I want you to know is the camera angle does move on the left, so we have to manage that. But you'll notice as she takes the club away, you can see how that head just drops ever so slightly. You can see it on this angle as well. The camera angle is moving, but you can see in relation to the trees how her head is just dropping down ever so slightly. That is more than likely just because you'll see how much this left knee does move out forward towards the golf ball in that takeaway that just drops that head, but it also gets just a nice little bit of tilt in those hips there and that takeaway position. Now what you'll notice with Nelly in this takeaway position, she takes the club back very, very one piece, nice in a straight line. She's keeping that club face very, very passive, not a lot of roll in the wrist there. And we just get into this lovely, lovely takeaway position here. You'll notice from face on, those hips move ever so slightly back, not a lot of lateral rotation. You'll see a lot of guys will have a little bit of bump into that right hand side. She only has a subtle amount there. We don't see a lot of rotation through the hips. There's just a subtle amount, maybe 10-15 degrees, and you'll see look how much that Nike logo is pointing away from the target. So lots of rotation through the thorax there. You'll see again just a very traditional one-piece takeaway where those hands are moved directly under the shoulders. That club shaft is just outside the target line there, and that club face is nice and parallel to her spine there. Just lovely position. Now if we take her a little bit further back, you'll start to see that right hip pocket move back as she's loading into that right hip. You'll notice this is what I talked about at setup, that look at the visor, look how she kind of moves. Can you see that head sort of moving down and in this almost funky position where that visor isn't rotating like we'd normally see. We'd see a lot of guys rotate more this way with the head, where it's staying more with that left eye more centered on the ball. And you can see how that peak of the cap isn't flat, it's just ever so slightly tilted. That again is probably just to that positioning of the left eye dominance. You usually see that. Now what we'll notice here is look at the tremendous amount of flexibility. Belt buckle is still not rotated loads, but if we look at the logos on the shirt, they're pointing out there. Amazing flexibility here. You'll see how we just run it through. Look how those hips are very, very stable here. You can start to notice how that left knee works down. Left knee is working down, which just lowers her and gets the correct tilts for Nelly here. So let's get rid of those lines. Give her that traditional lead arm position. You'll see that minimal rotation through the pelvis. That knee's a little bit more bent. That right knee has started to straighten ever so slightly as she rotates into backswing. You'll notice how that club shaft is just outside the ball, which we see a lot of the times with driver. Her hands are fairly deep for somebody so tall. We'd normally see the hands a little bit more in the center. But apart from that, just lovely, lovely lead arm position. Not a lot of wrist set there. You know, a lot of guys, well, you used to see more wrist set, but what we'll see in transition is why people aren't doing that wrist set move anymore. So let's take her up to the top of the backswing here. Again, look how stable those hips are, not a tremendous amount of rotation. And then just take her into this static position here. You'll see as she's starting to rotate that right hip pocket, really works back. There's not a lot of lateral motion here. And look at that for a top of the backswing position. You'll see how much rotation through the thorax there and very minimal hip rotation. Don't try this at home. Very, very flexible player we've got here from Nelly. What I want to take note as well is look how much width there she's got from those hands that are really far away from her head. You'll see that on the down the line view, loads of width. And what I love about Nelly's swing is how good that right arm structure is. The elbows are nice and close together here, just very, very structured top of the backswing. Now, they're the kind of static almost positions that we'd look at. Now let's look at this dynamic move, which is where the magic happens for me in Nelly's swing. So let's zoom in here. What I want to take notice is look at the hip here. So as she starts a downswing, can you see that move down? Like, tremendous amount of athleticism here. How much that, I mean, if we draw a line on a skirt, you can see how much she's dropping through that hip here. So she's loading those obliques, really using this glute medius on this left hand side to really load into the ground. So we'll see from face on how much that pelvis starts to drop here. You see that move dropping into that lead side. So she's using, anyone who's into the gym, these obliques here, this glute med, these glutes are tremendous in providing that movement here. And what I also want to look at is look at her hands and then look at this movement. So she's almost still moving into backswing as she starts that down movement through the hips. It creates a tremendous amount of torque and elasticity through that core and through that lead shoulder, which then can be released as speed in the downswing. So let's take her a few more frames down. And you can see that athleticism. Look how the pelvis, or the belt buckle, is pointing at the ball, yet her torso is still pointing out there. You can see here how she creates that right arm structure and just maintains it on the way down here beautifully. That club head nicely shallows. Boom. And just look at that athleticism. She's really contracting everything here. Regains that right knee flex and is really loading into the ground, and it's just like a slingshot from here. Everything's just pure athleticism. It's not like she's trying to force it from here. It's just a reaction, really. So in this really loaded position, very a la long drive in a lot of senses, you'll notice how that right hip is a lot lower than the left. So it's going to promote a very much upward angle of attack and an into out swing path. That could cause some issues for Nelly going forward if she starts getting a little bit too into out or too much up. Could cause some skew with flights in terms of too much right to left movement or some poor ball striking. So she might try and work on leveling those hips out in the downswing. Maybe could cause some injuries too. But you'll see as we move it down, I'll clear that line off. Look how she's maintained, well, actually increased that angle here through that move. Lag is created a lot of the times through what the body's doing, not through what the hips are doing. So again, that's another store of energy and power. So let's bring it down. You can see that strength and athleticism there, and you'll also notice how that head is just backing up towards the right there. Can you see that? And how she's getting a lot more tilt now with the spine just to promote that angle of attack. You can see how she's very, very much back on it as that right knee's driving towards the ball, gets a lot of tilt. And let's just see from down the line, you'll see this almost backing up movement. Look at that lag, and look how beautifully that that position is, where that shaft is just lovely, in this lovely position, almost dissecting that right forearm. And you'll see how that right arm is nicely in front of her body there, matching that right shoulder is a real key position. You can see here, club is just in a really nice delivery position. Little bit unusual in that you can see how much her toes are sort of still connected to the ground, in that because she's backed up so much, she's going to have that almost reverse weight shift where the weight in the downswing moves left and then starts to back up. And what you'll see is, if we look at that left foot, you can see here as she starts down very much into the toes, and then because she's creating a lot of vertical force here, it's pulling that left foot up off the ground. So whenever that left foot comes up off the ground, then we move towards this right leg. Justin Thomas is one guy that does it. You'll see a lot of the long drive players, you can see how much he sort of moves that pelvis initially down and then starts to elevate as she pushes through that big toe on the left foot and then pushes off the ground, and then the pressure is going to move back towards that right foot, which is a very powerful move but can cause some issues in the swing, but she's doing pretty well with it. And then look at that extension through the ball. Look how much that foot is off the ground there. I'm assuming on the left hand side she's going a little bit harder at it. You can see how much she's backed up on that right side there. Again, she's very flexible, but could it cause some issues longer term? Potentially, because look how much she's backed up on it. You'll see a lot of guys, that pelvis will be more over that left foot in this position. So I could see her having some back issues at some point. But you can see it here, how much she's shifted that pressure back on that right toe. Can you see that little move? So she's pushing off the ground and then sits back on that right side. So again, that can cause some back issues, can cause too much of this movement in the golf ball and some inconsistencies of strike. But a lot of great players have done it. Retief Goosen was one of those that had quite a lot of weight positioned on that back foot at the follow through. Now, if we look at that follow through, you could say if we just blanked out that and took like a blackout photo of it, you could call that Rory Tiger. That just a tremendous amount of athleticism where that club shaft is pointing almost at the target. Just love that position. I'd like to see it earlier to this left side if I was coaching her, just because I think it could cause some issues. But in terms of the swing, how beautiful it is. I just love this action. I could watch it over and over, and I do. And I'll be doing also some analysis comparing Nelly's swing to some of the best, like Rory and Tiger, just so you can see how much she does share in common with these great players.